That's a good thing. Tonight, we're going to have some fun. We're going to go over some contracts and talk about some terms and get you all sharpened up for the test. Good enough?
Excellent. Sounds good. So I'm assuming we can't sign up for the test until we actually have the completion. Is that
That's
correct?
Yes, you have we give you a certificate that says you've passed all the classes and you've done the school tests, and then you get this clearance to take the exam. You have to have that.
Right. So I've been into kind of their site and trying to like set up, and I kind of get to a point that says completion date. I'm going, okay, this is kind of what I figured. I have to wait till I get to that point.
One thing they have, which is really valuable, is the Student Handbook. Have you downloaded that one?
I have not. No. Okay.
Yeah, you ought to download it.
Okay.
Is that on Pearson View?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you ought to download it. And the reason why is because they tell you how they weight the test. So here's a topic and there'll be 4 questions from this topic. And here's another topic and there'll be 8 questions from this topic. Here's a topic and there's only 2 questions. So you don't want to be spending a whole day and a half studying that 2-topic question.
Right.
2-question topic, so that'd be a waste, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. And it tells you the procedures and how to, but things are changing right now. They added a lot of test locations in Utah, then they took some back and they've added them up again. So, it's constantly changing with COVID and what they think is safe and not safe. And so.
What is the typical time from when you actually finish the class and then you go on to sign up for the test?
I think you should go in right away.
Okay.
Come on, let's be real. You only load this stuff in short-term memory.
That's what I'm trying to do is figure out.
You stretch the class out over a long period of time, and then you finish the class, but you got busy. So, it's 3 months later and you're going to have to restudy everything. Just get in there and get it done.
Right.
What would be the time frame, like calling to schedule the class? Do you know that? Like if I were to call to schedule the class?
They're pretty busy. So, and because of social distancing at the testing center, they're not using all their cubicles either. So you just have to call and you have to ask them, because in Utah now we have, Dan, how many do we have testing centers? At least 4 or 5 now?
There's 4 large ones, and then I haven't looked at how many little ones because they opened up a bunch of little ones.
Yeah, and you could take it in some other jurisdictions too. Like, you could take the Utah test in Nevada, make a weekend out of it. No, but so you could, so you just have to ask them. And when you're getting them on the phone, you say, well, I want to take it in Draper. And they say, well, Draper is not available until next month. Well, okay, what's first available?
Right.
And then even if you have to drive to, North Salt Lake or Bountiful or something like that, it would probably be worth it to get in and get it done as quickly as possible. Okay.
Right.
I think you can actually schedule the exam before you finish the course, and you just put the day that you estimate that you'll finish, and that'll shortcut that week or 2-week wait after you sign up.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great input. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Rick Roller, and I'll be your game show host for tonight as we discuss this fabulous topic of contracts. With us tonight is also Dan Naylor.
Hi.
Hi, Dan.
Who is our producer for the evening and also the owner and a chief bottle washer here at the Institute of Real Estate Education. And the guy that keeps it all together and keeps it all running, keeps everything updated, and makes it the best school that there has in that there is in Utah, in my humble opinion. Okay. All right. So let's talk about contracts. And what I want to talk about first is that contracts have 4 essential elements. And what I mean by essential elements is if you don't have this in your contract, it's not going to be a valid contract. It could be voidable, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the 4 essential elements are mutual consent. Mutual consent. There has to be a meeting of the minds. Mutual consent, consideration, capacity, and legal purpose. Now, okay, so it's mutual consent, consideration, capacity, and legal purpose. And for real estate contracts, we kind of say there's a 5th requirement, and that is it must be in writing, because we have a uniform statute that many states have enacted called the Statute of Frauds, which requires that real estate contracts be in writing since they're so important. You know, that you're dealing with a lot of money and something with a lot of import, so you have to do that. Okay, so you have to know about those, and we're going to discuss those a little bit more. Now, we do have this general key concept outline. Hopefully you've downloaded this, and this is real helpful for you to do the test, because what this is, you know, they're key points. And so I'm going to be working from the section called contracts. You know, so if you have one, you can follow along. If not, I'll try to make it entertaining enough that you'll get it anyway. But you need to have this printed out for the classes. You'll get more out of it. Okay. Okay. So the first concept here, the first key point, all owners must sign a sales transaction. Okay. Now, sales transaction could mean the actual buy-sell agreement, which we call the real estate purchase contract, but it could also mean a listing agreement, whether it's a buyer's listing or a seller's listing, where they're contracting with you, the agent, with your brokerage, that you can be their exclusive agent, and there's different types of listing agreements, which is a whole different class. But if there's 3 owners, how many people have to sign that listing contract? This is a hint.
All 3?
All 3 of them, yeah. If there's 6 owners, how many people have to sign that listing contract?
6.
It's all 6. And if there's 2 owners, whoops, 2 owners, that's 2. This means something else in England, but if there's 2 owners, it's 2. So it, you know, whatever, however many owners there are. Okay. I've got a deal under contract. It's a Village Inn up in Ogden that we've been working on getting closed. And it's, you know, it's a nice piece of property. It's 1.7. We have 9 owners, and getting them to agree on anything is a real trick. But it's what you got to do, and they all have to sign everything. So we have a buyer for that project. They're, you know, and they put up $30,000 non-refundable, and they need an additional time to negotiate with UDOT for a right-of-way and a few things that have to be done. So they're going to put up another 15 grand, well, another 30 grand on the 15th, and then 15 every 2 months until they can actually get it closed and whatnot. But so. But every time they come up with the change, I have to get them all together on a Zoom call, and we talk about it. And, you know, there's some minor owners and some major owners. And usually the minor owners say, well, you know, we're just minor owners. Whatever you guys want to do is fine with us. But there's 4 major owners. And so anyway, it's fun. But the point is, it doesn't matter how many owners there are. It's not majority rule. And this is a test concept. And that's why I'm trying to hammer it home. All owners must sign a sales transaction, listing contract, whatever contract it is, all owners have to sign it. Equitable title. There's a concept called equitable title. Now, a lot of getting ready for the test is to learn all these crazy terms. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's a lot of sales aids out there to do that. I have one that I'm willing to give you guys. It's free. Go to rickroller.com. That's rickroller.com. And that'll take you to my website, and look for the Quizlet program, which is a free vocab program. And I suggest you use the flashcard function. There's different ways you can use these definitions, but there's 400 terms in there that you got to know, guys. And some of these terms, like equitable title, I mean, you know, when's the last time you used it? You just don't use these kind of terms in real life, you know. Honey, how about a little equitable title? You know, I mean, it's just, it's
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
you know, and so equitable title means that a person has a contractual interest to obtain the title to that property. So this group that wants to buy the restaurant property, they have it under contract. And so that gives them the right to buy that property. Now, can the seller sell it to somebody else? Well, he can do a backup contract behind our contract, but they have equitable title, and that gives the buyer some rights. It gives them the rights to enter the property and do investigations and inspections and whatnot. And the seller agreed by contract, by our real estate purchase contract, which will be the topic of our next class 2 weeks from now, which will be on the 16th. We're going to talk about the real estate purchase contract, which will be loads of fun. But in that contract, it actually specifies that the owner, even though it's still their property, the buyer has some rights. And one of the rights is the owner can't go out and put additional liens against the property. You know, they can't do a lot of different things. And so the buyer has some rights. It's not legal title, okay, but it's equitable title. And that just means they have the right to get the title, okay, if they satisfy the requirements of their contract. Okay, earnest money. You know, most contracts involve earnest money, particularly now when it's such a hot seller's market. You're not going to get anything by offering low earnest monies. The bigger the earnest money, the more attention you're probably going to get. But the purpose of earnest money is to provide potential damage consideration. Like if these guys, if the seller could say, hey, you know, on that restaurant property, the sellers could get together and say, you know what, you guys have had plenty of time to look at this. You should have negotiated with UDOT faster, you know, Utah Department of Transportation. We're not going to extend your offer. We're just going to keep your 30 grand, go pound sand, you know. Well, they've already spent $45,000 on a site study and other investigations that they've done, and they're willing to keep adding up 15 grand every 2 months until they actually close. So I think the sellers are going to go with it. They ought to, because any buyer we find for that property is going to have the same problem. So, you know, I mean, UDOT's just, we thought it'd be easy for them to get the approval they wanted. You can't get it. Okay. Now contracts have to have offer and acceptance. An offer and acceptance, and these are clearly defined. Offers have to be clear and complete. If you have an offer, you know, over the years, you know, having done this for 40-some years, over the years, I've received offers from agents, and they had, you know, one price. We want to pay this price for the property, but then down here, there's a place to re-enter that, and it's a different figure. And so here's the offer, because well, do you want to pay this or do you want to pay that? Or there's just a conflict in the contract. It wasn't prima facie. Is that a real offer? Here's a hint. No, it must be clear and complete. It has to be something that if my seller decided to do it and they signed it, we would have a binding contract. So that's the offer. And then it has to have an acceptance. And acceptance is so important. Next time we get together, we actually have a section in the real estate purchase contract that defines what acceptance is. It spells it out specifically exactly what it is. So contracts must have an offer and acceptance. Vendors or sellers, you know, think of a hot dog vendor. Vendors are sellers. Vendees are the buyers. And there's a lot of ors and es on the test. There's grantor, grantee. But the grantors, the ORs are givers. They're the one that give you something. Okay, so whether it's the hot dog or if it's the real estate they're giving you, they are the giver. So the ORs are the givers and the EEs are the receivers. And that works great until you start talking about loans. And in loans, you get it screwed up, because when you're doing a mortgage, the mortgagee and the mortgagor are not who you think you are, okay? Because if you own a property, can a bank call you up and say, hey, this is Friendly Bank downtown, and I'll tell you what, we just took out a loan for you on your property. Just come down to the bank and get the money. You're going to love it. You know, it's a 25% interest, but it's $10,000. Just come on down, get it. No, you have to give the bank the right to hypothecate your, you know, to hypothecate your property. Hypothecate means putting it up for as collateral on a loan. So the mortgagor or the trustor on a trust deed is the owner. And the mortgagee and trustee, the mortgagee is the bank, and the trustee is this third party that's kind of supposed to be a little neutral, but really, if you get in trouble, it just ends up being the bank's attorney. Okay. But anyway, the ORs are the givers and the OEs are the receivers. Okay. When a counteroffer is submitted, you know, you get these offers in and the seller says, well, you know, this buyer wants my refrigerator. You know, that's a new refrigerator. We just bought that 8 years ago. I mean, why in the world would we give them that refrigerator? You know, we exempted that from the transaction, you know, and don't let little things like that screw up your deals. Just talk them out of it. Say, look, folks, you know, the average life of a refrigerator is 9 or 10 years. The old thing's about ready to break. Yeah, but we paid $2,500 when we bought it. Yeah, well, it's not worth $2,500 now. It's worth $250. And taking it out of here when you're moving, you'll probably ruin the vinyl on the floor or score or scratch up the wood floor, you know. And then you'll have to spend $500 getting everything or more, getting everything fixed. And about this time, Mrs. Seller realizes she's going to get a new refrigerator out of this deal. Oh, honey, you know, it's been making a funny noise too. So maybe we shouldn't do that. Okay. But what I'm saying is that if there's a counteroffer where there's a no, we're keeping that refrigerator. And so they counter back and say, we agree to everything except you're not getting our refrigerator. Then that is a rejection of the offer, with the new offer going back the other way. And so if they say, well, we're not going to sign the counter, you can't go, oh, King's X, you know, we'll take that first offer. If they want to make the offer again, that's fine. But if they don't, then, you know, you're out of luck. So a counter offer is actually a refusal with another offer going back from the offeree back to the offeror, and then they change roles, you know. So, and it's exciting, especially when you're sitting there trying to figure out a multiple choice question. Okay, the offer is officially delivered when it's delivered to the other party or their agent. In other words, part of the acceptance process means that the offer, when it's accepted, now we have a contract, must be communicated back to the other party. Hey, they accepted your offer, or to the other party's agent. Okay. And then hopefully the agent gets a hold of their client, you know, the buyer or the seller, either one, if it's a counter offer or whatever, and lets everybody know. Okay. Offers have to be in writing because it's that fifth thing, the statute of frauds. Remember I said that's a uniform statute. I mean, lots of real estate and lots of different types of transactions are done across state lines. But real estate is governed by state law. The laws in California and Idaho and Nevada are different than the laws in Utah quite a bit, you know, in certain instances, you know, because a lot of those are community property states, you know, and Utah is not. Brigham Young wouldn't have ever set it up that way. So anyway, the point is you know, it's too confusing. Some of you got that, some of you didn't. That's okay. And so what happens is, you know, multiple wives anyway. So anyway, what happens is, yeah. Okay. So because lots of real estate is sold across state lines, a lot of Californians are coming here and buying property. Other people from other states are buying property in Utah. It's better if some of the laws are uniform. So they're pretty much the same in California and Nevada and Utah, and they're called uniform statutes. Uniform Commercial Code is another one. The Uniform Probate Code is a third one. But the Statute of Frauds is not a law that was put into effect to prevent fraud, it was not a law put into effect to punish fraud. It's a law to prevent fraud by saying that real estate transactions are so important that all the documents for this transaction need to be done in writing. Otherwise, they're not enforceable in a court of law. So verbal contracts are not enforceable. That's why it's kind of like the fifth element, okay? Contracts can be assigned to another party unless the agreement prohibits it. We had a time in Utah back in 2006 when people were going to new home subdivisions. They would come in vans from California and they would say, okay, I'll take these three. And another guy say, I'd take those two. And, you know, they would buy the seller out, you know, the contractor, you know, they put all their properties under contract. And then they would wait, you know, as the construction process go. The market was going up so fast back in 2006, kind of like it is now, but it was going up so fast on new homes that they could sell their interest in buying that home for 10 or 15 grand because the prices were going up on the new home. So when it got done, they just sell the contract. So what happens now is that assignment's been somewhat restricted by a section in the REPC, which we'll look at next time we get together. But so contracts are assignable unless the agreement prohibits the assignability. That's the wake up item there. Escrow account is to hold other people's money and safeguard it. You know, that's where the earnest money goes. Seller's responsible for the property until closing. Well, sure, it's still their property. You know, until they deed it to the other party, they're still responsible to maintain it, take care of it, keep it insured, you know, and because it's still their property. Now, they're responsible until closing, and then at the closing, then obviously there's a new owner. Personal property is transferred with the bill of sale. Real estate's transferred with the deed. So what transfers that refrigerator that they thought was so cool? Bill of sale. And usually the title company prepare both those. The seller shall fill out property condition disclosure, not the agent. Part of the listing process, you know, I've got 2 listings I'm working on, Dan. This week I went out on 2 listing appointments, and we're going to get both of them. Right now the sellers are filling out their property condition statement. It's interesting because both of them say, I don't know, because both of them were owned by investors and they want to resell them. So they haven't lived there. One of them's even out of state. They haven't even seen the property in 5 years. It's been looked at by a property manager. So, which incidentally is a good place to get listings, is from out of state owners. But so so that's tough to fill out a condition statement when you haven't even seen the property. So what you do in that situation, what I suggested they do, and they both agreed to do it, is that they are going to get a home inspection that's going to cost them about $500, and they're going to provide, you know, the home inspection to the buyer. Here's our home inspection we paid for, so you would have an idea what it's like, and also give them a home warranty, you know, so that if there is a problem, it'll take care of it. So it's going to cost them about $1,000. And I said, look, you know, even if we sell your property, you know, there are high equities in these properties. You know, one of them was you know, mom's house that they inherited. It's, you know, that was free and clear. So, you know, they're, you know, I said, even if you get your money, what you really want is to get your money and keep your money. So you don't want any lawsuits. So $1,000, you know, so that if you ever get in front of a judge say, well, wait a minute, you know, I mean, they weren't warranting anything. In fact, they even went the expense to give you an inspection and a home warranty. I don't have a lot of sympathy for you, Mr. Buyer, if you come back whining now. You know, I mean, you knew what you were getting, or you should have. So, you know, that's what we do, but you can do whatever you want. But anyway, okay, material facts include things like lawsuits that are against the property, building and zoning code violations. That could be a material fact. A material fact is anything that has great money importance to that property. You're selling a $2.5 million home, and there's a little bit of a roof problem that would cost $800 to fix it. Is that a material fact on a $2.5 million home? No. It would have to be enough to where a buyer would say no. But what about a $1,200 repair on a condo that's $159,000, if you can find one? Probably would be a material fact. So it has to have an impact on the value or perceived value or the expected value that a buyer or seller is getting in or out of in a house. A survey can find and verify encroachments, lot lines, and setbacks, and that's usually what we use a survey for. Okay. If you have any questions, I'm going kind of fast because we've got some other things to do, and so, but if you have a question, just say, hey, wait, just voice it, okay, and we'll get it done. But surveys, we don't do a lot of surveys. You know, on commercial properties, sometimes we do more. I mean, we're selling a lot of condos and townhouses now, and that's kind of ridiculous to do a survey on those because they're already, you know, it's a different kind of ownership. But surveys can be important, and fences, you know, could be off a few inches or a few feet one place or another, and they've been there forever. Everyone just thought those were the property lines. But you're not going to know unless you get it surveyed, and surveys are not cheap. So we really don't do them that much. One of the clauses in the real estate purchase contract is the time is of the essence clause. And that says the dates in this contract are solid. I mean, they're important. They need to be abided by, you know, and you have to be in compliance with those dates. And so a lot of these dates have, this is when your opportunity, Mr. Buyer, to cancel the deal falls off, you know, for your home, you know, if you're doing a due diligence inspection or whatever it might be. And if you miss that date, you know, you're in trouble. You know, there are serious consequences. That's why time is of the essence. Finance contingencies allows a contract to be canceled for lack of financing, obviously. Due diligence, I just illustrated by you have a due diligence deadline to do all your research, do all of the checking you want to do. But after that due diligence, you can't cancel the contract for some problem with the property that you should have already found out about or made an issue of. The due on sale clause is not something we're dealing with a lot these days, but that's a clause in the mortgage contract or the trust deed contract, you know, the loan, which says that the property cannot be sold to someone else without paying the bank off. And so we're not using it a lot right now because loan interest rates are so stupidly low that it's insane. You know, I mean, most of the loans that are on existing homes are higher than what you can get if you went out and got a new loan right now. I mean, you can get a new loan right now in the 2%ers area, 2.57, 2.5, somewhere in there. And, you know, a lot of loans are still hovering at 3.5 or 4 or whatever they might be. So we're not seeing a lot of formal or informal types of sales, but on the test you will. So you need to know what a due on sale clause is, and that's a sale that says you got to take care of the bank, and they're real serious about that. Right now, you know, there's a lot of about, I don't know what the number is. Maybe Dan, maybe you know, but there's a lot of people that haven't been making their mortgage payments because of COVID, you know, there's just a lot of them, like millions. And so the banks haven't really pushed foreclosure because there's, you know, there's been a lot of executive orders signed that says you can't do it right now. You can't even evict a tenant. You can evict tenants, but it's difficult to evict tenants that aren't paying the rent. You know, you can evict them for other reasons, like they're running a meth lab or they're tearing up the property or they're a nuisance, a few things like that. And there's some loopholes on that. They're not paying the rent. You know, they have to send you an affidavit saying, you know, I can't pay the rent because of COVID, or I lost my job because of COVID or something like that. But, you know, there's little things you have to do in order for them to qualify for that. But it's an interesting time, and hopefully we'll be finished with this COVID thing pretty quick. You know, just get out in the sun more and take your vaccine if you want to, or whatever you want to do. But, you know, I think it's calming down, I hope, a little bit. And we can start meeting again face to face, and that'll be fun. Okay, right, Dan? Say yes. Thank you. Okay, so what happens is an option agreement reserves the possibility of future purchase. Okay, now contracts could be unilateral, and they, you know, which is just one way. And the best example of a one-way contract, a unilateral contract, is an option agreement, because does the seller have to sell? Yes. But does the buyer have to buy? No. They have an option to buy or not buy. You know, so now they're going to lose their option money if they don't buy, but they have an option to buy it or not. But if the buyer decides to buy, the seller must sell to them. Okay, that's what an option does. And that's why it's a unilateral contract. It's a promise from the seller to the buyer that, yes, if you come up with the money and close by the deadlines and everything in our option agreement, then I will sell it to you for that price. Now, a bilateral agreement, bi meaning two, is meaning there's promises both ways. And our real estate purchase contract, which we'll be discussing on the 16th, is a bilateral agreement because there's promises from the seller to the buyer and there's promises from the buyer to the seller. You know, so that's promises both ways. And that's the distinction you're going to have to know for the test for dang sure. And sometimes we see something called a contract for deed. And that's kind of like it transfers the ownership rights to the buyer, but not the legal title. And that's where you're trying to get around that due on sale clause. And it's just not going to work. Right now, the banks are just happy if people make the payments. They really don't even care who the check is from. And there will be a brief time here when this presidential executive order falls off, and the banks will start going back to all these different delinquent homeowners, and they'll say, look, I mean, let's do a loan mod, let's help you out, let's do whatever we can. But, you know, a lot of these people have lost their jobs. I mean, you know, if you're living in Pennsylvania or any of the oil states, it's going to be tough because you're not making 100 grand anymore. I mean, you've been driving an Uber, but that's not going to make up for that kind of income. And, you know, and you don't know how to make solar panels. Anyway, the problem is that, you know, we have a whole lot of people that just became unemployed in the last couple of weeks. And I think that if they're delinquent on their mortgages, they're going to have to sell their houses. Now in Utah, it's an anomaly in Utah, guys. I mean, you're lucky to be coming here and working in Utah, because the worse things get in the economy and in the country at large, the more people wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm moving back home to Utah where I feel safe. And, you know, honey, I mean, that's where all the grandkids are. You know, we've loved living in California. We've loved living in here, there, wherever, but there's employment in Utah. You can get good jobs. We'll learn how to code, and let's go to Utah, you know, and so they do. And so that's just the way it is. It's always been that way. So that's kind of fun. Okay, now we have some questions. Daniel, are we ready? Let's look at our first question, see how schooled we are and how well we can do on these. Let's look at number 1. We're going to talk about leases for a moment, okay? Which is a type of contract. By the way, last week I recommended a couple of books. Oh, no, we'll talk about books in a minute. Okay, here we go. All righty. Our technical help tonight is, you know.
There you go.
There you go. All right. If a lessor and a lessee come to terms on a lease for an apartment, but after the agreement is signed, it's revealed that the lessee is only 16 years old. What is true? Okay, now, first of all, who's the lessor? When you go to a property and you want possession, you want that landlord to give you the what? Keys. So who is the giver here? You want the keys. Okay, and so the landlord is the only one who can give you the keys. You can't just, you know, find a vacant thing, move in, and, you know, a month later the landlord finds out you're in there and says, oh yeah, we just moved in, you know. I mean, that's called a squatter. That's illegal trespass. So, but it's the landlord is the lessor, and the renter is the lessee. So the lessee is a 16-year-old, right? But what's the problem with 16? Well, one of the essential elements is capacity. And in Utah, the age of capacity is 18, and he's 2 years short here, or she, whichever. So is this contract void, voidable, or valid? In order to be valid, it would have to have all 4, and maybe even the thumb, the Statute of Frauds, essential elements to be a valid contract. Remember, mutual consent, right? Capacity, consideration, and mutual agreement. Well, that's mutual consent anyway. So you have to have all those. So yeah, valuable consideration. Okay, so what happens is in this case, the lessor, the landlord, had capacity, but the minor did not. So the contract is not valid, but it's not void either. It's voidable. And why is it voidable instead of void? Because they both didn't have capacity, but one did. So if you had 2 minors entering into an agreement, that would be void. But because the lessor, the landlord, had capacity, it's voidable. And voidable at whose option? Is it A, lessee can void the contract? B, lessor can void the contract? C, contract is automatically voided, and the contract is activated. You know, that sounds good, but that doesn't mean anything. So it's got to be A, B, or C. What do you guys guess?
C.
A.
No.
B.
I would say C.
Well, we're not doing so hot. The lessee can void the contract.
Hey, yeah.
Why can the kid void the contract and the adult can't? Because the kid lacks capacity, but the adult has it. So the adult should have known what they were doing. But the kid, you know, well, he's a kid, you know. But some of these kids, I mean, crap, man. There was a gal on the radio this last Saturday I was listening to. She made $2 million on social media the last 3 months or something, reviewing stuff, opening boxes, and you know, she's been a real hit on YouTube or whatever, but you know, maybe some of the other social media, but you know, she made $2 million. Well, she's a minor, but you know, so could she get this apartment? Yeah, probably. I mean, the contract's voidable at the minor's volition. Usually what happens when kids are going to college and they're renting apartments, these savvy landlords get the kids' parents to sign the lease because they're not 18, a lot of them, maybe, you know. But the kid has the money, you know. I mean, what if he was buying the property? 800,000, no problem. I'll have my banker wire the money over. I mean, you know, I mean, now don't get confused by that. I'm just trying to illustrate that the minor, the hurt party is what I'm getting at. It doesn't have to be a minor. It could be someone that just lacks capacity. A few years, I mean, I'm going back a few years now, but like 25 years ago, there's a sweet little old lady that used to call realtors and ask to go see a house. And, you know, since most realtors are, you know, hot one, you know, they run out, pick her up, and they show her the house. And then she's, oh, do you mind if we stop at the grocery store on the way home? And she'd get her groceries, and then they take her home. And sometimes she'd even write an offer on the property because the agent would push her into it, but she lacked capacity. It was funny, you know, it was a joke. Most of us knew who she was. And these agents would pick her up and take her out. And her son would have to run around and say, look, mom lacks capacity. I have adjudicated the fact that she's not responsible. So, you know, you don't have to just be a minor. You could be someone that lacks capacity, you know, or you could be like someone that's in a coma or something. I don't know. But, you know, but the person that was harmed can actually get out of the deal. Number two, according to the Statute of Frauds, a real estate contract must be, what do you think, guys?
D.
D.
Go with D. Yeah, that's right. It's signed by both parties. You know, there must be that mutual agreement we talked about earlier. And because of statute of frauds, it's got to be in writing. Okay. Actually, if we're signing it, I don't know how it could not be in writing, but whatever. You don't have to have, the real estate doesn't have to be encumbered. That means there's a loan on it. I mean, lots of real estate's free and clear. Anyway, chattel is personal property, not real property. Cattle is cattle or chattel. Okay. It must be a lien. That isn't even good English. You can throw that one out. Okay, let's go to number three. An agreement to purchase property is an agreement between what?
B.
Yeah, B, that's pretty clear. Okay. Agreement to purchase is what you're working for. You don't sign it as the agent. You're not in there. So that eliminates A and B, and D has more agents in it too. And this is a good example of how to do multiple choice testing. You just, you know, I mean, read the question twice so you have a really good handle on what it says. Because I'm telling you, some of these stems, these, you know, in the top part of the question are specifically written to lead you in the wrong direction. And then when you look at the answers, you say, well, wait a minute, they're agents. They're all three the same. If one of those is right, then how could the other two be right? Or, you know, oh, buyer and seller, that's it. And you take it, and you're given 4 hours to do this test. Okay. There's two sections. There's a Utah law section and a national section. When you're done with the national section, you move into the Utah law section. Some of you have been waived out of the national because you're coming in from another state. So you're given an hour and a half to do the Utah, but for the rest of us who are going here and doing both sections, then you got 4 hours. That's plenty of time. Because some questions like this should only take 15 seconds, right? And then you come down, and there's others. If you come across a math problem and you're not a math aficionado and you get all flustered and whatnot, you can save those if you want. You can skip that question and it will bring it back to you later. I mean, the software for the test is really easy to use. And when you go there, there's a tutorial that teaches you how to use the software. Please do that, because that doesn't start your timing. You can take as much time as you want on that tutorial, and then you hit the, okay, I'm ready to start the exam, and say, are you really sure? And then that's when the clock starts ticking. And the timer on the computer is a countdown timer. So you don't have to do math on that. Only it's 4 hours. It says an hour and a half, and you know, I don't know where I'm at. You know, it's a countdown timer. So that's cool too. So I think you'll like taking the test then. Okay. All righty, where are we? What's the next question? It is number D and E, number 4. D and E are tenants in common. Now, there's different ways to be vested in title. You know, so how do you want to take title is a question you might ask your buyers, but because that's probably how you want to put their names on the real estate purchase contract, the same way they want to be vested in title. You may be working with this wonderful guy named Dan Naylor, but his real name is Daniel Naylor, and he normally takes title as Daniel and the middle initial Taylor. I don't know. You know, I'm Rick Roller, known worldwide as Rick Roller, but really I'm Richard R. Roller. So, you know, I mean, ask them, how do you normally want to be vested in title? And if there's going to be another co-owner with you, then they need to be vested in title. Now, this particular person, D and E, are tenants in common. Another way you could do that in Utah and have a joint. Now, if you're owning it alone, what do we call that? Ownership in severalty.
Severalty.
Like there's several of us. No, but it's severity. You know?
Oh, several.
Yeah, you're right. It's like you're severed, you're cut away from everybody else. So if it's just one owner, it's ownership in severalty. Okay. If it's joint ownership, it could be tenants in common, it could be joint tenants, or it could be tenants by entireties. Now, tenancy by entireties is like joint tenants, but you have to be married too. So, you know, it's joint tenants, but it's legal in Utah, but nobody uses it. Everyone uses probably joint tenancy if you're married, and joint tenancy could have 3 or 4 owners. But the thing about joint tenancy is a right of survivorship. So if there's 3 owners as joint tenancy and one dies, the other 2 automatically get it. All you have to do is record the death certificate. Okay. So anyway, this one's not that, it's tenants in common. And so the question is that they're tenants in common, but they both rarely spend time in the property anymore as their lives have changed. You know, it was the house in Sedona that they bought, they enjoy. Maybe they're going to Airbnb it, maybe not. But D wants an agent to list the property now. Prices are up in a lot of places, and things are doing well in Sedona right now. I was just down there a few weeks ago. And anyway, the point is that D wants to sell it. So who has to sign that listing contract? Remember earlier we said
D, right? D.
D.
all owners have to sign. Remember that? Okay, so let's look at these. D can sign the listing for the property. You can sign it, but it's not going to be a valid listing. No signatures needed to list the property. Yeah, right. Give me a break. E can give verbal permission to list the property. What's that statute of frauds say? So both D and E must sign the listing agreement. Now, you might think that's a pretty simplistic type question. And thankfully, many questions on the exam are simplistic, okay? You're going to see this concept, whether it's written like this or written a little differently, but the concept will be the same. And the reason why we have these little questions is because Dan and I know you're going to be tested on this concept. Okay, so all the little things on this topic review, key points review, are test items. That's why it's so valuable to get this. And if you don't know everything, but you know these things, you only need a C- to pass the test anyway. You only need a 70%. For most of you, when's the last time you settled for 70% anyway? You know, you're probably going to get more like 90 or 85 or something. I don't know. All right, let's go to the next question, please, which is number 5. Okay, a contract is only binding to one party, such as an option to purchase a piece of land is what? By uni, executed, or activated?
Unilateral.
Unilateral, very good. Very good. Unilateral. 100% you're going to have that. You got to know that, okay? Promise only one way, all right? All right, let's go to number 6. Any contract can be rescinded. Now, what's it mean when you rescind something?
Take back.
Back out.
Yeah, you back out,
Okay.
And if you're doing it before time is of the essence deadline comes, okay, then usually there's not a lot of penalties for that. It can be, and when we go through the real estate purchase contract next time, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But any contract can be rescinded if the buyer backs out, if the seller feels the price is too low. Man, I sold that way too low. Both parties agree. Well, that's warm and fuzzy. The parties are married. Okay. All right. Yeah. So the answer to this one, guys, is
C.
C. Both parties agree. We're going to rescind the contract. Okay. So that's kind of how that works. Okay. Now, a couple other things we want to talk about. Okay. There's a couple of other terms that are real important. One of them is express or implied. Now, implied was done verbally or by actions of the parties, okay? Or something that was said to someone else, like, oh, call Rick, he's my agent. They are implying that you have a written agreement and that you are their agent. You may or may not have one. But express means words. So implied, well, you use verbal words, but express means written words. So if it's express, it's written, okay? Or used with words. But Statute of Frauds says all real estate contracts have to be what? Written, okay? Okay, and then there's another couple of terms that are real close. One of them is called executory and executed. Now, executory stage of a contract is after it's been entered into. Buyer and seller have agreed, they've entered into the contract, but it hasn't closed yet. And it's not in default because there was this long escrow period or whatever the escrow period was. That means it's in the executory stage. It means it's under contract. There's an agreement working to be fulfilled and a settlement date that's been agreed upon. And that means it's executory. Executed means it's finished. Now, sometimes you see the word executed and you say, well, that just meant it was signed. Yeah. But in the test, I want you to think executed means it's over and done with, it's closed, you've already spent your commission check. Okay, now let's talk about this enforceability thing because I told you we'd spend a little bit of time on this. A contract between two minors, is it void, valid, voidable, or unenforceable? It's void. Yeah, because neither one had capacity. The example we had earlier between an adult and a minor was voidable, and it was voidable by whom?
The minor.
Party or the minor. Okay. Now, what if you have two adults, they've met all the four elements of the contract, which were mutual consent, okay, they agreed, consideration, capacity, and legal purpose. Those are the four elements. And then for real estate contracts, we say there's that fifth, statute of frauds, okay? So if you have all those, then it becomes valid. But that statute of frauds has another word attached to it, and it's called enforceable or unenforceable, depending on if it was written or not. Because of the statute of frauds, if it's not written, it's unenforceable. But could a couple of good old boys shake hands and meet up at the title company? Yeah, let's, hey, Herb, I want to buy that 5 acres you got over on the south pasture there. You know, we've been talking about it for years. Well, what do you give me for it? I'll give you 50 grand. Okay. Yeah, let's meet over at the title company. Didn't write anything down. Walk in there. Title agent's going to say, we got to have something written, you know, but anyway, that's beside the point. But he shows up with the money and he buys it. And maybe the only thing that was signed was just the deed. Maybe they didn't even use a title company. I don't know. But the idea is that if one of them changes their mind, we shook on it, Herb. You know, you said you're going to sell it to me. Yeah, but I don't know, some city slicker from California came. He's going to give me 150 for it. Wow. Well, okay. I guess you better sell it to him then, you know, but because it's unenforceable, because it wasn't what? Written. Okay. Now, what if someone does breach a written contract? I mean, all the elements were there. What are remedies for a breach? Well, one could be rescind. Remember, we said the two parties can get together and say, well, look, let's just call this off, okay? You know, and particularly for a contractor, I mean, lumber keeps going up like crazy. You know, lumber is the all-time high in history right now, and it's crazy how expensive it is to build a home. And so, you know, the contractor, as he gets squeezed, as he's going through this 4, 5, 6 month or more process to get this house built, he could be pretty well squeezed. And, you know, he knows that if he could get out of this contract with that buyer, he can make a lot more money by selling it to somebody else. And so maybe that's what he wants to do. So, he might say, well, man, I get another buyer for that house. The buyer wants out of the deal, seller wants the buyer out of the deal too. And that's called a mutual rescission. Now, partial performance is another remedy. A partial performance means that enough was done that the buyer showed up at the closing and closed. Okay. But the seller was supposed to do two other things, but they didn't do it. And so what happens is if they go ahead and close without entering into a further agreement, there are many clauses in the contract that don't survive a closing. And so what happens is if the seller didn't do those two minor things they're supposed to do, and then the buyer decides to call the seller up and say, hey, you still need to get out here and pour that extra piece of concrete or fix this broken thing or whatever. You have to deal with those before the closing, guys, because a lot of things don't survive the closing. Some things do, a lot of things don't. And well, I'll just sue you. You get in front of a judge and he's going to say, well, why didn't you enter into a further agreement? This thing, the contract was dead at the closing, so, he did enough that he motivated you to come in and close. So we're going to say that he, conformed with the contract with substantial completion. Substantial meaning enough to get you to come to the closing and buy it. So quit whining about these two other things, tough noogies. Now, specific performance is where one party or another decides not to close, and the other person says, well, wait a minute, you've got to close. It's that important to me. And so they sue them for specific performance, saying they must close. Now, usually this is where a buyer is suing a seller, and usually it involves something a little bit more complex. Judges do not like, and many times won't be very kind to either party when you try to sue someone for specific performance on a house sale. They'll say, just go find another house. Yeah, right. Or go find another buyer. They don't like it. But on commercial deals, they often will entertain lawsuits on those because you could be doing an assemblage where you're putting 4 properties together downtown, and this one on the corner is absolutely necessary in order to make this deal work. And at the last minute, that buyer says, well, I think I could get more money. I'm going to, not sell it to you. Well, wait a minute, we have an agreement. And so they go to court. And usually in those cases, the judge, as long as everything's okay with the contract and was well written, will require the seller to sell it to the buyer. And that's called suing for specific performance. A lot of times you can sue for damages. This buyer of the restaurant up in Ogden, they will lose $30,000 in earnest money on the 15th. And they've already put 45 grand into site study and environmental study and a lot of other things. So, they're getting up there, around $100,000, $80,000 that they're going to walk away from. But they're defaulting. They're the ones that are getting out. They will cancel the contract. They won't go default. They'll just cancel the contract for the 15th. But so they might, in some cases, try to sue for damages, but they're not going to. The contract was too well written. Now, liquidated damages, usually that's the earnest money. When liquidated damages must be agreed to in advance. Look, if you don't perform, you don't do what you say you're going to do, I'll just keep the earnest money as liquidated damages. Okay. And that's defined in the contract, and that could go either way. One of the properties I was working on this week is involved a divorce, and someone died. One of the two parties died, and it's really the divorce was like 5 years ago, but there's some lingering things, and it's just anyway. It's been in litigation for about 6 months. And it's supposed to be coming out of litigation in another 10 days or so, but what I want to be, and I was telling the sellers, look, what we need to be really careful about is to make sure everything is finalized. And so we're going to do, before we put it on the market, we're going to order a title commitment. And the reason we want the title commitment is to make sure that everything was done correctly and that we have marketable title. Because one way a seller can default is they cannot produce marketable title in accordance with the purchase contract. And so we had a settlement date we agreed on. And if the seller can't deliver marketable title on or before that date, then liquidated damages could kick in, where the buyer says, okay, I gave you $5,000 earnest money. That defined liquidated damages. Mr. Seller, you owe me $5,000 because you couldn't deliver title on that date. So liquidated damages could cut both ways. Normally, agents think about it as cutting, on the buyer side, he's going to lose your earnest money if you don't do everything you're supposed to do, and they'll keep your earnest money's liquidated damages. But if a seller can't deliver title, it could be a problem too. And having been involved with thousands of transactions over the last 43 years, I'm telling you guys, before I put something on the market, I always order a title commitment. And it's surprising the things that will come up. I mean, I had a situation where a house on 33rd South here in Salt Lake City, or 39th, 33rd, one of those two. Anyway, what happened was there was a small owner carry. So, the buyer purchased a property a number of years ago, and they lived there 9 or 10 years. They paid off that second mortgage that was owner carried. And so the owner, the previous owner, the seller, when he got the check, he took the note, the promissory note that the buyer had given him, wrote paid on it, and sent it back to the owner. And that's as far as it went. Well, that doesn't take the lien off the property. In order to remove a lien off a property, there has to be what's called another document called a deed of reconveyance. And the problem was we didn't, it's been 9 years. I mean, we don't know where that seller is. Well, luckily, we were able to track them down and tell them what had happened. And we sent them a deed of reconveyance. They signed it, sent it back, and we recorded it. But most title problems can be handled with time. Some of them can be handled real quickly. Some of them take a little bit of time to handle. And so if you are like some agents and you wait till it goes under contract, and we're going to be closing in a month, and they don't really do anything until 20 days before they're dragging their feet, and they order a title commitment late, and then they find out there's a problem and it's going to take a little bit longer to get it fixed. Who are they going to be upset about? You, the agent, who should have known better and handled it up front. Now, a lot of agents decide, well, I don't want to do that because there could be what's called a cancellation fee. And most title companies aren't charging it, but they're supposed to have one, and they have to register it with the insurance department. But it's usually around $200. Well, in my listing contract, it says that we're going to order the title commitment early, and if there is a cancellation fee, the seller's going to pay it. But it's just a tip. I think you ought to order them right away and get them done. Now, hey, Dan, could you throw up that picture of Og and I? This is, guys, I keep recommending books to you, and anything by Og Mandino is really worth it. This is a cool book because this is a trifecta. Let me see, where's that camera? Okay, this is, you probably can't see that, but this is 3 of Og's books all in one.
It was upside down. Can you show it again?
Yeah.
Oh, Mandino. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and what it is, this one's 3 of Og's books. It's The Greatest Salesman in the World, Greatest Secret in the World. This is a picture of me and Og. See, I was younger then. And The Greatest Miracle in the World. Any of Og's books are really, really great. Now, you guys are entering into a sales profession, okay? And I just, Og was kind of was a mentor of mine. And of course, he passed away. He died on, in 1986. And I had a chance to spend some real quality time with Og. We actually did some seminars together in about 91 or so. So he died 5 years after meeting me. But anyway, the point is that I think I still have that tie. Well, anyway, the point is, you need to read good books, and anything by Og is really good. I mean, for years, he was the editor of Success Magazine. He sold millions of his books internationally, and they're all about getting your mind in the right spot to go out and do sales, guys. I mean, some of you didn't realize, I have to be a salesman. I thought I'd drive around in a pretty car and show pretty homes, and they'd say yes. And Yeah. So anyway, I'd recommend anything by Og, especially, you don't have to buy this one, but you know, if the greatest salesman in the world, the greatest secret in the world, and the greatest miracle in the world, all three of those are classics. And you know, always render more and better service than what's expected of you, no matter what your task may be. Og Mandino, great man, overcame a lot in his life. Well, guys, that's our hour together. I appreciate you being here. Remember rickroller.com. Also on rickroller.com, besides getting the access to the Quizlet program, which should be on there, you can also get access to my best-selling book, which is called Limitless. I wrote with a good buddy of mine. This is all about, you know, remember that movie called The Secret, and it was all about the law of attraction. Well, there's actually not just one law of abundance, meaning law of attraction. That's definitely one of them, but there's 9 of those. We go through all 9 of those in here. We also go through a process called breakthrough, which helps eliminate your self-defeating behaviors. And if you'd like a copy of this book, go to the website, rickroller.com, and you can get a free one. You can't get this gold embossed one, you know, and that would cost you money. Actually, I'll give you one of my gold embossed ones, and I'll even sign it for you if you come to my 12-hour new agent class for free. I'll just give it to you. They're like $29. But anyway, the point is, you can get on audio, you can get on Kindle, and you can get, you know, digital for free off my website as well. So if you want one of those, you're welcome to it. Guys, it's been fun with you, working with you tonight. My number, 801-556-8000. That's 801-556-8000. I answer my own phone. Do not text me. I mean, come on, you know, don't send me a damn telegram. I probably won't answer it. You know, call me on this stupid phone. You know, we can have a real conversation. Now, I know I particularly want you to call me if you're stumped. If you're working on a concept on review and the test is like, you know, in 2 days and whatnot, and oh man, what are they talking about? I can't remember. Pick up the dang phone and call me. We'll spend a quality 3 minutes on the phone and you'll understand it, you know. However, I don't care when it is, day or night, just call me. If I'm not available, I won't answer. But leave a message. I'll get back to you. But you know, but there is one time you cannot call, and that's during the test itself. And I know I'd be the most help to you, but it's going to get us both in a lot of trouble. So you know, can't call me during the test. They take your phone away anyway. You know. All right. Well, thanks a lot for being here. Thank you, Dan, for being the techno genius for the night and producer of the program. Does anyone have any closing questions you'd like to throw out?
Oh, I have one. Oh.
Yes, please.
Go ahead. I'll go after you guys.
I just wanted Dan to put up the Dropbox information again.
Okay, great.
To the,
Thank you, Larry.
the outline.
Yeah.
It is in the chat.
Okay.
Good. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yeah. So I've been doing interviews with different brokers.
Yeah.
So I was curious, like, what do you have like a recommended list of questions I could ask them, just to kind of have an idea of like what's good and what's not good?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I did a video on that on my YouTube channel, which you can find on YouTube. It's called Rick Roller Real Estate.
Oh, sweet.
Rick Roller Real Estate. Okay. Now, if you just put Rick Roller in, you're going to get that, you know, Rick Ashley, and then, you know. Anyway, you don't want that. You know, you'll get Rick rolled. But just Rick Roller Real Estate, and there is a video. I did a whole video on, well, 2 videos that'll be helpful. One of them is how to choose your first broker. You've only got one chance to choose your first broker. Anyway, and then there's another video on there that is helpful. It's called Things You Can Do While You're in Real Estate to Prepare to Hit the Bricks Running. Now, we're limited in Utah in that you cannot solicit business unless you have a license. So don't be calling all your friends and getting on your YouTube channel and say, hey, I'm getting a real estate license in a few months. Don't do anything and wait for me. You know, you can't do that. That's against the law. It's going to get you in trouble. Some other realtor will turn you in. So don't do that. But you can tell people, hey, you know, I'm studying real estate. I'm in real estate school. You can tell people what you're doing. Here's something I learned. I learned in Utah, you can do joint tenants, you can do tenants in common, you can do tenancy by entireties. Here's what each of them mean and whatnot. This is what I learned in real estate school. But you do not say, and I want your business when I get licensed. You can't solicit, but you can share what's happening in your life. You can also compile a list. You need to get a list. You need to get a list of all your family, all your friends. If somebody recently got married in your family, get the wedding invitation list, and you need to get their emails and their phone numbers. Because you're gonna excuse me, but this is a sales business and you need someone to sell to. My first sale in this industry, Ricky, in a Volkswagen Bug, was broke and needed the money real bad, and I started in this industry. My first sale was to Stephen Matthews, my brother-in-law, bless his heart. He waited for me to get a license, and we went out and we looked for a day. We found the house. I wrote up an offer. I took it to the office. My sales manager rewrote it. I went back, got Stephen to sign it. We took it to the seller, and the seller signed it. So my first week, I sold my first house. Okay. Nice. And I told Stephen, you're the only one I know in this town. I just moved here, and do you know of anyone that might want to buy or sell real estate? He says, well, yeah, there's this guy in my ward, and he said he might want to sell. Let's get him on the phone. We got him on the phone. I said, hey, hey, guess what? I just got a house. This is cool, and here's my brother-in-law, Rick. Hi, I'm Rick. Steve says you might want to sell your house. Yeah, I'm thinking about putting it on the market right away. Well, can I come over tonight? He says, yeah, sure. So I went over that night and I listed the house. I got my first listing, my first sale, my first week. And how did that happen? My list. Well, I only had one person on my list, but it was Stephen. And some people say, well, I don't want to call my friends and family. Oh, heck, they love you.
Right. Now,
if you've been a schmuck all your life and you've gotten them into 5 multi-level deals and then none of them worked out, they still love you. Okay? See, real estate is different, folks. Everyone wants it pretty much. They do. They want it. We don't sell real estate. We just show people how to get it. It's different. It's not nutraceuticals. It's not vitamins. It's not exercise equipment. It's not club memberships. It's not vacuum cleaners. It's not solar panels. It's not extensions on your car warranty. That's not what we're doing. We're providing real value to people and they already want it. You just have to show them how to get it. But the people that will support you in the beginning are the people that already know and love you. And if you don't market to them, you're going to put yourself, maybe you won't even make it in the business. You need to pick up those first 3 or 4 sales, 5 sales, whatever they can be, and you need to get out there. That sale to Stephen started me on a path that I was able to earn in the Grand Junction Board of Realtors in Grand Junction, Colorado. I was the Rookie of the Year back in 77, 78. Oh. And I did 59 transactions my first year. Okay. Did 100 and about 98 my second year. If you're going to do this, go do it. Okay. And my gosh, with the prices where they are today, that was $30,000, $40,000 houses, good grief. 12, 15 transactions is $100,000 a year, guys. Mm-hmm. So, don't work on that list now. Hit the bricks running. The first day you're licensed, you should be sending out emails and phone calls and letters and cards and whatever you want to do to market yourself. And there is no better opportunity right now than real estate. Everyone wants to come to Utah, or at least a significant number of them do. And interest rates are stupid low. They're stupid. It's crazy. You got to buy everything and get your hands on. Yep. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm going to stick with it. That's my story. Call if I can help. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for your time.
Downey.
Again. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Stormy.
Thanks.
Have a great evening, Alberto.
Hey, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for being here, Tim.
Yeah. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.